to the south of Tamriel. They went up to Dwemer, which is now modern-day East Skyrim and Morrowind.
What technology did Dwemer use?
They used automatons, which were powered on soul gems, dynamic ores, and one was powered on the Heart of Lorcan.
Who did they enslave and why did they enslave them?
They enslaved the snow elves, and because the snow elves were going extinct by the Nords, they went underground, and the Dwemer gave them asylum. Eventually, they turned them blind to make them fully slaves, and now all snow elves are blind.
What race are the Dwemer?
The Dwemer are Altmer, who have been modified who have kind of adapted after being in the underground for so long.
How did the Dwemer go extinct?
They went extinct after the Red Mountain was being attacked by the Chimer, who are now modern-day Dark Elves, and they stabbed the Heart of Lorcan, and they all disappeared, except one who was in a plane of oblivion at the time.
The Dwemer were originally from Dwemer, which is now called Morrowind, and is east of Skyrim. The Dwemer went to Skyrim to expand their kingdom and to find a way to become gods. The technology the Dwemer had was quite advanced because of their ambitions to become those gods. The architecture of the Dwemer were also advanced because they had multiple rooms for all sorts of tasks, such as scientific, academic, and engineering rooms.
Who is this? Another of the smooth skins looking for food? This one wasn't trapped with us. You're dead.
What is the significance of the Dwemer in Skyrim?
The Dwemer were in Skyrim because they wanted to mine this most valuable resource known as Ethereum, which would allow them to use this resource to the best of their abilities to defeat anything or anyone that standed in their way.
What is the significance of the Dwemer strongholds in Skyrim?
The Dwemer strongholds are in Skyrim mostly to remind us of this once great, not necessarily nation, but race that lived in Skyrim before anyone else got there. They are left behind so we can explore them and learn the Dwemer way of life, so that we know how to not mess up and suddenly disappear like they did.
The history of the Dwemer is very scarcely known throughout Skyrim. The people that now reside in these lands do not have much to tell them of what happened to the Dwemer. However, there still exists a handful of books and ruins across Skyrim that tell of their presence and eventual disappearance. Many know of their disappearance, but not the cause. Here we will tell you the true cause for the disappearance of the Dwemer. Sometime after the First Era, in the year 221, the Dwemer discovered a new raw material while mining in a large underground cavern. It was now that we get into the events that led to the War of the Crag. The War of the Crag took place in the early First Era. Before the War of the Crag, there was a war that concerned the Snow Elves, also known as the Dwemer Race, and the Atmorans, a human race later recognized as the Nords. They hailed from Atmora, a continent north of Tamriel. The Snow Elves were being destroyed by the Atmorans, who had launched a war against them, beginning with the Night of Tears. The Battle of Mosring was the turning point for the Nords during that war, and began to win more victories against them. The entire race of the Snow Elves started to diminish, and fearing extinction, they were forced into hiding. The Snow Elves and the Dwemer always had a thin relationship, but the Snow Elves had no one to turn to for help but them. Many sought help from the Dwemer. The Dwemer would not help fight, but instead offered refuge, only if the Snow Elves agreed in consuming a toxic fungus which blinded them. We don't know exactly why the Dwemer wished to blind the Snow Elves, but the best guess would be to become slaves for the Dwemer. The Dwemer betrayed and enslaved the Snow Elves, indirectly causing the de-evolution of the Dwemer over many decades. The Snow Elves' bodies were being contorted and corrupted, and their minds were poisoned with hatred. The Snow Elves' bodies were being contorted and corrupted, and their minds were poisoned with hatred. At some point, the Dwemer rose up against the Dwemer in revolt, resulting in what we know as the War of the Crag, which eventually ended with the mysterious disappearance of the entire Dwemer race. War of the First Council. At an unknown time, Dwemer miners discovered an artifact deep beneath Red Mountain in Morrowind. A high priest of the Dwemer identified the artifact as the Heart of Lorkhan. He forged 3 weapons, Kinning, Sunder, and Wraithguard, to allow one to tap into the Heart of Lorkhan and use it to power the Namibium, a massive Kinning, Sunder, and Wraithguard, to allow one to tap into the Heart of Lorkhan and use it to power the Namibium, a massive artificial god. The Namibium was a large Dwemer mechanism. Crud. My sentence isn't finished.
Suck.
No, my finish. Okay. Kinning, Sunder, and Wraithguard all touch the Heart of Lorkhan, and at this moment, the entire race of the Dwemer disappeared. No one knows where the Dwemer went, what became of their entire civilization. But all that we know is that they are the most interesting race in all of Skyrim. Thank you, and goodbye. However, power has always tempted corruption. It didn't take long for each of the 4 city-states to eventually attempt taking control of the Forge themselves, and led to a civil war throughout the empire of the Dwemer, known as the Ethereum Wars. Decades passed as the war raged throughout Skyrim, and over time the war had begun to weaken the Dwemer city-states in Skyrim and crumble the Dwemer Empire. At the same time, the High King of Skyrim, Geller, saw the opportunity to conquer the weakened Dwemer city-states. Dweller? Crud, that's not his name. Geller led his armies across Skyrim, spreading and conquering the land and taking over many Dwemer cities in only 3 years. That's a good one. The Dwemer have many locations in Skyrim. Each location is unique in its own special way. The problem is that out of all the Dwemer cities left behind, only one remains. That city is Markarth. Each other location in Skyrim is full of dangerous traps and the machines that they left behind. This creates many problems for an adventurer who goes in, near, or around any of the ruins. Many of the Dwemer did not live in Skyrim, but some did. Those who lived in Skyrim were miners looking for new resources in Skyrim. The Dwemer did in fact find a new resource. It is Ethereum, the strongest resource. They found it in Blackreach, a vast underground cave system located under the 3 main Dwemer ruins, Alfand, Ruiz-Ballard, and Mizunketh. This then became more Dwemer. This then made more Dwemer come to Skyrim and find more Ethereum. However, most, if not all Dwemer in Skyrim were miners and miners only. What is the history of the Dwemer?
The history of the Dwemer is very scarcely known throughout Skyrim. The people that now reside in these lands do not have much to tell them of what happened to the Dwemer. However, there still exists a handful of books and ruins across Skyrim that tell of their presence and to the true cause of the disappearance for the Dwemer. In the early First Era, during the Battle of the Red Mountain, the entire race, the Dwemer, disappeared. An alliance was formed between Blackreach, Arkanthams, Ruiz-Ballard, Mizulft, and Betharzel, which would unite the Dwemer for one purpose. The responsibilities of this project were spread between cities. Arkantham served as the center of command and the primary research facility operations. Mizulft was used as a storage site, and it is unknown what role Betharzel was assigned. The Ethereum Forge was made beneath the city of Bethalft. Many ethereal artifacts were constructed there. However, power has always tempted. The responsibilities of this project were spread while Ruiz-Ballard, the primary source of Ethereum, was also given the role of performing mining operations. Mizulft was used as a storage site, and it is unknown what role Betharzel was assigned. The Ethereum Forge was made beneath the city of Bethalft. Many ethereal artifacts were constructed there. However, power has always tempted corruption. It didn't take long for each of the 4 cities to eventually attempt control of the Forge themselves, and led to a civil war throughout the empire of the Dwemer known as the Ethereum Wars. Decades passed as the war raged throughout Skyrim, and over time, war has begun to weaken the Dwemer cities in Skyrim and crumble the Dwemer Empire. At the same time, the High King of Skyrim, Geller, saw the opportunity to conquer the weakened Dwemer city-states. Geller led his armies across Skyrim, spreading and conquering the land. It took a century until around First Era 324 for the Dwemer Empire in Skyrim to recover, and would slowly reclaim most of the cities and territory they had previously lost. It is now that we get into the War of the Crag. The War of the Crag took place in the early First Era. Before the War of the Crag, there was a war that concerned the Snow Elves, also known as Dwemer Race, and the Atmorans, a human race later recognized as the Nords. They hail from Atmora, a continent north of Tamriel. The Snow Elves were being destroyed by the Atmorans, who had launched a war against them, beginning with the Night of Tears. The Battle of the Most Ring was the turning point for the Nords during that war, and began to win more victories against them. The entire race of the Snow Elves started to diminish, and fearing extinction, they were forced into hiding. The Snow Elves and the Dwemer had always had a thin relationship, but the Snow Elves had no one to turn to for help but them. Many sought help from the Dwemer. The Dwemer would not help fight, but instead offered refuge, but only if the Snow Elves agreed in consuming a toxic fungus which blinded them. We don't know exactly why the Dwemer wished to blind the Snow Elves, but the guess would be to become slaves for the Dwemer. The Dwemer betrayed and enslaved the Snow Elves, indirectly causing the de-evolution of the Falmer over many decades. The Snow Elves' bodies were contorted and corrupted, and their minds were poisoned with hatred. At some point, the Falmer rose up against the Dwemer in revolt, resulting in what we know as the War of the Crag. which ended when the mysterious disappearance of the entire Dwemer race.